Start the recording here too. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Sudha Jamte, and this is Weekly Wednesday on Business School of AI. I'm so happy to see so many of my students from Stanford Business School of AI and sometimes from Barcelona Technology School and all others who are coming together to have a fun conversation, to do knowledge sharing on interesting topics related to IoT, artificial intelligence, or autonomous vehicles. Today, we have a special guest, Sunil David, who's joining us from India. Sunil, thank you so much for joining us at this hour. We really appreciate this. He is an expert in IoT. I'm not going to do justice to Sunil's introduction. I know that he heads the ASEAN region for AT&T, and he's a veteran in the telco industry. So our topic today is going to be about IoT innovation in telcos. But first, I want to start with understanding Sunil's many different awards and his affiliations, because I see a lot of that on the internet, especially on LinkedIn. So because of that, I've made an exception today to go stream our weekly WED, not just limited to our students to come back to YouTube and then get a recording. But as always, Henry Mullock is here. Hi, Henry. So he's going to be blogging this event like every weekly Wednesdays with the speakers. And if you want to follow up, the blog will be on medium.com/business school of AI. And without further ado, let's get started. Sunil, tell us a little bit about your background and welcome.
Thank you so much, Sudha, for inviting me for this discussion. Firstly, let me say that I'm not an IoT expert, because if I'm saying that I'm an expert, then learning would stop. And IoT is always a journey, right? I mean, you're always constantly learning. Sure. Technology is evolving at a very fast pace. So every day I learn something new, and hence I would not want to call myself an expert. I would rather call myself as an IoT evangelist rather than an expert. Now, coming to my journey, Sudha, so experience overall in the industry, bulk of it in the telecom industry. Of my 27 years, 19 years with AT&T. Wow. Now, since you asked me specifically about IoT, my interest in IoT, was sometime early 2012. When I was in my first role with AT&T. I was earlier the head of sales for Southern region, and IoT was just a small component of our overall portfolio. And IoT was at a very infant stage at that point in time. But around 2012, I started to develop interest in IoT at that point in time. And so much so that in 2013, 2014, I started to attend a lot more events. In fact, I attended the Mobile World Congress in Spain in 2013. I attended the CES in 2014 in Vegas at my own cost, because I was so passionate about IoT, and I really, was fascinated with what IoT could do, because its impact on industry, its impact on consumers, and its impact on the overall society at large. At that very early stage, I felt that this is going to be a great revenue growth engine for the telcos. And hence, even though we had very limited capabilities in terms of offering IoT in India, I used every opportunity to try to position our IoT capabilities to our enterprise customers. However, in 2015, yeah.
So before we jump in more on your IoT journey specifically, you said you're an IoT evangelist, right? I saw you got some award for being the digital evangelist of India. What is that? Tell us a little bit more.
Right. So, I work with a number of industry bodies, Sudha. I work with the Confederation of Indian Industry, which is a well-known industry body in India. I work with FICCI. I work with NASSCOM, which is one of India's largest IT industry body. I work with a number of these industry bodies. Some of my thought leadership is shared with these bodies. Some of them are taken into Niti Aayog, which works very closely with the government of India.
For policy making, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
we have a global
IoT, in fact.
So we have a global audience. We have some people from Europe, some people from different parts of US. And let me see. Yeah. Mostly today we don't have anybody else from Brazil, or we have some people from Nigeria. So you'll have to give us in context. I know about NASCOM, but I don't know about other organizations. So,
I'll just take a minute to tell what NASCOM. So NASCOM is an IT industry body which represents the interests of all the technology companies in India. So like how NASCOM is in India, you might have similar bodies in other countries.
Yep.
And this is one of the oldest bodies here. So I work with
some
them
kind
on
of business council. It's some kind of business council.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like the voice of the industry. So the technology industry have certain challenges, some issues. They kind of take those issues to the government of India and try to shape policy which favors the industry, right? Okay. So I work very closely with them. In fact, they have a very huge initiative to skill women leaders in digital technologies. It's called Women Wizards Rule Tech, where they have a very nice program, chartered over a 9-month period, where they get many of the women techies, many of them are the entry level, some are mid-management, who enroll for this 9-month program and get them exposed to different digital technologies like IoT, AI, AR, VR, and so on and so forth. So I'm an IoT tech guru registered with NASCOM. And so I work very closely with them. I've done about 7 to 8 sessions for more than 2,000 women over the last 2 years. And the whole objective is to sensitize the women about the impact of IoT. What are the benefits of IoT? What are the job opportunities in IoT and all that stuff, right? So
I know some amazing IoT entrepreneurs in India. So maybe I'll connect you with them. And you said it's not limited to IoT, because IoT becomes a catch-all bucket these days, right? Because it connects to data.
And covers the industry. Yeah, because IoT is the fundamental building block in terms of extracting data from the physical world, but what's the use of all the data if you're not able to get the insights from it, right? So IoT obviously has to work very seamlessly with the cloud. You obviously need to use analytics and AI to make sense of all the data. So IoT obviously has to work with all these other technologies together for a company to get really the business value. So a lot of my effort over the last 2 years has been in terms of trying to sensitize companies about the need to adopt digital, and especially post-COVID. What we've clearly seen is that those companies who had not started their Industry 4.0 journey were very badly affected. Those companies who are more advanced in their adoption of digital were less impacted. In fact, some of them did really well. So I spent a lot of my time outside of my work trying to work with these industry bodies, carve out programs, do conferences, a lot of them, of course, virtual, to sensitize them about digital and tell them about what are the use cases and all that stuff. So in recognition of all the efforts that I put in, some of the white papers that I've written, events that I've spoken at, I spoke at about 100 odd forums over the last 100 plus forums the last 2 years. So in recognition of all my efforts, I've got about 6 different awards this year. So then one of them being the Digital Evangelist of the Year, or the fastest growing Digital Evangelist of the Year, which was given by a media conglomerate called Ishavan earlier this year, Sudha.
So if you don't mind, can you share what the other awards are? Other awards?
Yeah, so I got, so in March, I got an award from the Indian Achievers Forum. It's called the Indian Achievers Award. And again, it all relates to my efforts in digital advocacy, digital technology advocacy, digital technology evangelism. That was the first award that I got this year. I got an award called the CXO Excellence Award. And this is a very special award for me because this came from my peers in the industry. There were different categories of awards, and all the CXOs across India, they kind of voted and said that, given the work that I put in, I deserve this award. So I got that CXO Excellence Award that was sometime in August. And the last award that I got was from the World CSR Congress. In fact, that was the first award that I went to a stage and received it, because all the other 5 awards were all given virtually. But this award was really special, which I got last late August. And I went to Bangalore and received it from the World CSR Congress, the Smart City Leadership Award. Again, this relates to my work, which I've done in terms of advocacy of digital technologies, and especially how smart cities can use a lot more technologies, to make life easier for citizens and all that stuff. So
fantastic,
overwhelming, yeah, absolutely wonderful. Be recognized by the industry for all the efforts, Sudha.
So congratulations. So one of the things we do here is everybody here is busy. They are professionals out working in industry, but they take the time to come together, and we keep this fixed time, which is 9 o'clock here in Silicon Valley for me, which is 18-hour in Europe. It is 1 p.m. in Brazil. So, and again, I think it's 18-hour in Nigeria too. So we have people coming together because we, like you, everybody is hungry to learn the latest of what works, what innovation can happen, what is happening in a global scale. So one of the things that brought you to my attention is seeing your awards, and I think your network must be congratulating you, and it kind of bubbled up. And so there's a lot of things that you're working on that is global, and I'm hoping that we will have a conversation. And Yash is the person who owes this. Yashashwini Vishwanath, she's not here, so I get to have the joy of having this conversation with Sunil today. So I will have a request for people. So if you don't mind, you can, give your name and where you're joining from, so that you can connect with each other, because you would benefit from learning from everybody else and their work as much as we're going to do from our speaker today. So let me jump in. So your journey to IoT resonated with me, because that was at least that initial learning and the awe that IoT is something bigger than what I thought was how I got into IoT. So I wrote my first book about IoT disruptions, and I came from e-commerce industry. And then I realized that, oh my God, everybody is in IoT, but they come at it from a different lens altogether. So that part is fascinating, and that fascination has never left me. And I got into autonomous vehicles, looking at it as connected cars. So that's why I focus a lot more on data in the car as my focus area, instead of just looking at computer vision, which also is powered by data in some sense. So when we are talking about today, we are going to be talking about, for those of you joining in late, this is Sunil David. And we are talking about IoT innovation in the telco space. So IoT is about, like you said, adding sensors and the best way to collect data from the physical world. So sensors could be anywhere on our bodies, in our home, as Sunil was talking about an award in smart cities. It could be in our cities, it could be in our cars, it could be anywhere in the industry, on an asset, tracking equipments, or our planes or dams. So it becomes very vast. So I have a request for people. So if you have questions, you can raise your hand. That is easier for me. Or you can chat your question. I will come and field it at the right time. Okay. So my fascination is, when we say innovation in IoT and you come from telco, you're providing connectivity. So I found that Intel at some point is a chip company, but they ended up saying, hey, here is an IoT solution. And AT&T, you're going to talk about AT&T and other telcos about their play in IoT, but you mentioned that they went to multiple enterprise and industry. So again, there's a whole concept of partnership across multiple players. So a startup could be creating the sensor and the SoC to just build IoT, and then AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile or somebody else could be providing connectivity. But then the next piece is, and there could be more intelligence on the edge. There could be, now data moves to the cloud, so the cloud management, and there could be AI. Somebody else could be providing AI. There is so many dimensions to this. So when you look at it as IoT strategy for a telco, does the telco still think about, I'm here for connectivity, I want to sell more connectivity, or has the perception strategy shifted to think about city is our customer, or this enterprise is our customer? Have you seen that shift over the years? Talk to us about it.
Yeah, sure, Sudha. So I'll try to be as brief as possible, because trying to explain our IoT strategy will take some time. But we essentially have a three-pronged strategy, Sudha, when it comes to IoT, and IoT is one of our fastest growing revenue streams for us. The first pillar of our strategy is connectivity. And as you know, we are one of the largest players in the US offering cellular, wired connectivity services and all that, right? And outside of the US, we partner with a number of mobile network operators, and we use what is called global SIM, which can seamlessly roam in many countries. Now, what we believe is that as a telco, and given that we are strong in connectivity, our focus is largely on connectivity, and we really want to do that connectivity really well. So offer good quality connectivity, have a very good connectivity management platform that manages that connectivity, not just within the US, but outside of the US as well. There, of course, where we don't own our infrastructure, we partner with the MNOs and make sure that we are the single point of contact to provide the service. So that's the pillar one. Pillar two is the whole simplification of product set, because so while connectivity is the backbone, you obviously need good IoT devices that will connect to the physical assets. So we don't make the devices, but we have an ecosystem of more than 3,000 partners from whom we source the devices. And again, depending upon the client engagement, the customer can directly buy the device from the device manufacturer, or they can come through us. But we have a very good ecosystem of device partners. Some devices are very good for certain use cases, some for supply chain, some for asset tracking, and so on and so forth. And of course, we've also built our IoT stack. We built an IoT platform. We've also built certain specific vertical applications, partnering with vendors, for example, for fleet management, asset management, and so on and so forth. So our whole objective is to make it very simple for the customer. It has to be as much as possible plug and play. It is not. It's easier said than done, because trying to do device to cloud integration, each device follows their own protocols. So it's not going to be so easy. But our whole objective is to make it simple for the customer. That's the second pillar. And third and most important thing is, in terms of forging the right partnerships, because at the end of the day, IoT is an ecosystem play. So we got to have the right set of partners, the device partner, the hyperscale providers like an AWS or an Azure, those who build applications on the cloud, right? So we make sure that we have the right partnerships. And depending upon the client engagement, we can either focus on only giving the connectivity, or if our relationship with the client is really strong, we can play the role of what I call as an ecosystem orchestrator, somebody who would work with all the partners, put the whole solution together, and enable the service for the customer. So that is a role that telcos can definitely play. Because today, for most telcos, I would say more than 70 to 75% of the revenues are coming from connectivity. And what we're going to see over the next few years is the connectivity costs are going to come down, right? So it's absolutely essential for the telcos to go up the value stack, to move up the chain, so to speak, and try to see how you can get revenues from really data and other associated services, right? So our constant endeavor is trying to see how we can work with partners to take an end solution to the customer, because we are trying to solve a business problem for a customer, right? Yeah. IoT is not to be sold as a technology solution. IoT has to be sold as something that will transform a customer's business, right? So that's our whole objective, Sudha, in terms of making sure that we have the right set of partners. And we've been successful so far. I think more than 87 million connected devices, on our network, of which almost 40 million are connected cars. We are very strong in the automotive space, very strong in fleet, asset tracking, and so on and so forth, Sudha.
So transportation is one industry. You had mentioned smart city. Is there like a set of top segments that you focus on specifically?
So largely it's connected car segment, fleet and vehicles, So I would say more than 50% of the connected devices are, and it makes sense for us, right? Because here is it a huge
overall,
volume, right?
Would you say overall your focus is on fleet, or is it you're seeing that more of them are from connected vehicles?
No, we'd ideally like to target those segments where the volume is large. So for example, connected cars, because every car or a fleet would need a cellular SIM, right?
Yes.
So fleet is a huge market, a huge opportunity that needs to be tapped. Connected cars. I'll just give you an example of India. India, just about 10% of the cars today are connected cars. So there's a massive opportunity here. Europe is far more penetrated when it comes to connected cars. US, of course, is far more mature when it comes to using connected cars. But our focus would be on those sectors where the volume is large. For example, fleet, transportation, energy and utilities,
Yeah.
Those are the kind of segments that we would ideally want to target.
Okay. What about smart city or agriculture?
Our play in smart cities and agriculture is right now confined only to the US.
Okay.
So we have done a number of smart city projects in the US, for example, around smart lighting, smart poles, smart waste management. We've also built what is called a smart city operations center, which will integrate data from multiple systems. Because if you see smart cities, you have data residing in silos. You don't have an integrated view of data, right? So we try to build some kind of a system which will integrate all that together, right? So right now our focus is, when you talk about smart cities, is largely confined to the US, Sudha. And agriculture, again, largely US. We have done a few projects in the agriculture space, but not outside of the US at this point in time.
Okay. So I want to come back to connected cars and transportation because that's my favorite topic, but I want to be fair to everybody. And I know many of my students from my past AV classes are also here, I'm seeing, but I want to do justice to understand the broader portfolio because we are talking about IoT strategy. So smart cities, smart agriculture, fleet management, connected cars, you said utilities and energy, right? And manufacturing would be another segment. Am I missing any other bigger piece out there, which is IoT? Any other segment am I missing?
Within manufacturing, actually within manufacturing itself, you kind of segment it into three parts, Sudha, because one is the factory itself, where you're trying to connect all the assets within a factory. Our play there is very limited because within a factory, you can just set up a Wi-Fi or a fiber and connect all those assets. But connected products, companies who make, especially the discrete manufacturers.
So sorry, so within the factory is asset.
Supply chain.
Sorry,
supply chain.
So I didn't mean to interrupt. Within factory, it is asset tracking, right? So knowing what any parts are within the factory or movement of parts within a mining or something like that, right? That's what you're saying is very limited to a smaller geo. So you're not going to get a huger connectivity play. So there could be other forms of connectivity within the domain, right? Within the location.
Yeah, we actually are looking at opportunities where we can actually provide private 5G networks within a factory. In fact, there's a large semiconductor factory in Texas. I can't name the customer, but last year we set up a private 5G network using unlicensed spectrum to connect all the industrial assets, the AGVs, the robots in a factory. And because they needed very, very low latency, less than 5 milliseconds, and the attributes of 5G, very, very low latency, very high speeds, high capacity. So we kind of build that private 5G network.
Yep. And you mentioned three segments, right? 3 segments within manufacturing. So does anybody have a question, guys? So does anybody have a question that you want to ask me? Because I'm going from what Sunil is talking, and I just mentioned manufacturing and he said 3 different ways of slicing it. One of the things I like about how Sunil is approaching this is, other than doing his work, since he is evangelizing digitization and IoT to the broader world, he has a very nice way of structuring things. So he's looking at different industries and then within manufacturing. Sunil, other than physical asset tracking, so it's fascinating to see. And I heard you say connecting all the robots and assets within a factory location with 5G, right? What are the other 2 segments within manufacturing, would you say?
Supply chain, Sudha. Supply chain was very badly disrupted last year, COVID. So we started to see a lot more digitization and digitalization of supply chains. So supply chains definitely need to adopt a lot more IoT. And again, within supply chain, you can again divide it into 2 parts. One is wanting to track all the assets which are going from point A to point B. It could be tracking its location, its condition, temperature, shock, vibration, and of course, tracking the fleet itself, right? As it moves from point A to point B, you would want to know its location. You would want to monitor the health of the vehicle, integrate with weather systems so that you know exactly what the weather conditions are, integrate with traffic management systems so that You use route optimization so that you're taking the shortest possible route to go from point A to point B, right? So huge opportunity in supply chain. In fact, many companies who were very early in their digitization of the supply chains are started to, move a lot of their capital and investments into supply chain digitization. And in fact, I just did a session about a month back about how one can create a digital twin of a supply chain, where you could, and that needs a number of technologies to come together. You need IoT to extract all the data from the physical world, high-speed networks to move the data to the cloud. And then, of course, you need your AI systems to work because you want to predict outcomes. You want to take the right decisions. So digital twin of a supply chain. In fact, I just wrote an article on how supply chains are getting digitized, and digital twin is a key enabler for that. Probably in a couple of weeks, that article will be ready. I'll be more than happy to share that with you also.
Yes. We've had some speakers come in, and the cognitive digital twins versus regular digital twins is a topic dear to me. So that's fantastic to hear. So if you can share that article, we can share it with people. And when you see this streaming on LinkedIn, maybe you can share the link right there also. So that'd be helpful. Sure. Appreciate that. I'm seeing a question from Ajay. Ajay, do you want to just ask your question? Hey, Olga, how are you? So I'm seeing people from Mexico now. So we've got a real global audience. And Damir here is from Czech Republic. So Ajay is asking, Ajay, do you want to speak up a question, or you just want me to do it?
Yeah. So hi, Sunil.
Hi, Ajay.
So Sunil, my question was when you're talking about IoT, how is it impacting the auditing in the finance domain? Is it still evolving there, or do we have any implementations going on in that space?
So within the financial services domain, if you look at, let's look at banking industry. So ATM monitoring today, that can be IoT enabled. You can remotely monitor ATMs, know exactly when to replenish cash, find out if somebody's tampering with ATMs. So monitoring of ATMs. Then there are, again, I can give you an Indian example. You have a lot of these guys who manage cash, taking cash from the banks to these ATMs. So you're monitoring these vehicles which are doing that. Right, to check for theft and all that stuff. So that is definitely a use case. And then if you look at insurance sector, usage-based insurance, I think that's very common in the US. So today your insurance premium is tied to your driving behavior, right? So for example, in India, I can give you an example of how a Tata Group in partnership with AIA, a large insurance company, they are plugging in a telematics device into a vehicle. And today you pay based on the number of kilometers you drive. So somebody today who is not using his car for 6 months doesn't need to pay insurance, right? So you only pay based on the number of kilometers. And your driving behavior is, again, as I mentioned, tied to your premium. So if you're a safe driver, you pay less premium. If you're a high-risk driver, then obviously you pay higher premium, right? So usage-based insurance definitely another potential use case. And if you have a large banking customer, if they have a large campus, and today sustainability is a key, is a buzzword, so to speak, right? We just finished COP26 last month, and everybody has got a sustainability agenda, right? So how does one use IoT and other technologies to optimize your energy spend, right? To reduce your carbon footprint. So in a large campus with many of them using HVACs, number of assets, you can actually use IoT to optimize how you're spending energy, how do you optimize light usage, so on and so forth, right? And I see a lot more industries outside of banking also definitely wanting to use technologies to reduce their carbon footprint. And technology like IoT would definitely come in handy there. In fact, within AT&T in the US, we have so many buildings, and we have actually built our own energy building and management system to monitor the HVACs and all assets within a building. And we've seen significant savings in terms of cost for us. And this, of course, pre-pandemic. Now we are still, many of us are still working from home, but definitely a number of use cases around that. Ajay, I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, you answered my question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So does anybody else have any question? Okay. You mentioned supply chain. Supply chain is a hot topic. Did I hear anybody say something? Sorry, guys. let's see. I see a question. Okay. I will come back to that question. Thank you, Virend. So supply chain is a very hot topic because of COVID. We have, a backlog, and then now there is supply chain problems that we can see it affecting prices here in US. So how does the telco strategy play in with supply chain? Other than, we've covered a lot of different industries and a lot of different examples, and it shows the application power of IoT, right? So it's all about adding sensors and getting the data and the connectivity. The telcos provide the connectivity to move the data. And then you mentioned that you'd want to draw insights, you want to do AI with it, but you're focused on providing solution to customers, right? So that would be the lens from where you start this. So can you talk to us a little bit about telco strategy with supply chain? Because supply chain is about moving. So one is about creating transparency on where things are at any time, if there is a backlog in the supply chain. The second piece is actually making sure that things are moving along the line, right? And see where do they need to do any triage if there is a clog in the supply chain. So help me understand the telco strategy with supply chain, and hopefully you're helping us, move our, supply chain forward so we get out of the problem.
Yeah, so I can illustrate this with one example. So nothing like sharing a use case, and I love sharing use cases. So I'll just tell you what we did with Maersk. Maersk is one of the largest shipping liners in the world, right? And they have what is called as the refrigerated containers. They call them reefers, right? So these reefers contain a lot of, high-value pharmaceuticals, shrimp, strawberries, vaccines, and so on and so forth. And these reefers are fairly expensive, right? Because they don't come cheap, and you have these containers moving from one continent to another continent, going through the oceans and the high seas. Now, Maersk had a couple of challenges. So before they actually implemented IoT, one challenge was that when they had these containers moving, carrying all these perishable items from one place to the other, there was no way to track where the container was in real time, because once it leaves the shore and it's on the ocean, no satellite connectivity, customers had no clue where the shipment was. Second challenge that they were facing is that a lot of the items inside, as I mentioned, perishable goods, were all very temperature sensitive. So by the time they actually reached the destination, they were unusable. It's lost its freshness, not usable, and so the customers obviously were very disappointed that they got the shipments in not good condition. They were also facing challenges where the cost of trying to provide support for the containers, because every time a container reaches the foreign destination, someone has to come and check whether this container maintenance is done properly and all that stuff. So these are the kind of challenges. Then there was also issues around theft happening and all that stuff. So what we did is we actually worked with the partner to build a dual mode IoT device. When it's on the shore, it will connect to cellular. Once it's on the ocean, it seamlessly connects to satellite. So you can monitor the health of the container, the reefer, in real time. Number two, all the perishable stuff inside, you could monitor its temperature in real time. So every time there's a temperature excursion, alerts would go to the right stakeholder and they could take corrective action. So we made sure that we could monitor the temperature throughout his journey. And the most important thing, Sudha, is that we were able to give the customer the ability to know where the shipment is, right? All of us are shopped online. Once we order stuff, we would want to know when are we going to get it, and to track its location, when it's going to come and all that. So we gave the power to the customer through a portal or through an app. They can actually try. Maersk rather gave it to their customer. They were able to know exactly where the shipment is, right? So that went a long way in trying to improve customer experience. And the other thing is in terms of shaving off some operational costs, because as I mentioned, every time a container goes there, a technician has to come and check whether it's okay or not. So now we don't have to do that because you're monitoring the health of the container in real time. And if there's only a need for someone to come and do something, they would come, right? So these are the kind of challenges that we've solved. And so we work very closely with the device partner, integrated very seamlessly with our network, and we're able to provide the solution. So coming to supply chain and what the telcos can do, telcos can just provide the connectivity if required. It could be a combination of cellular, satellite, depending upon through what route the container or the shipments are going through, or they can play the role of providing maybe the device and maybe even the application and the platform, depending on the kind of engagement that we have with our clients. And we are perfectly fine just doing only connectivity or providing the whole solution, Sudha.
So and providing something real time means bandwidth, right? So each payload is moving through your network. So do you see the supply chain all being real time? Is that adding to the cost? Do you see a combination of edge and cloud use cases?
Oh, absolutely. So they definitely would need a hybrid approach. There would be times when you need to respond faster to any alerts that you see. And of course, you need also the historical data that you need to send to the cloud, and you're applying your AI algorithms, to make sure that you build a model so that you can predict a certain outcome, right? So I think hybrid is the way to go, so that there would be use cases where you would need edge to process the data locally, closer to where the data is getting generated from. And then, of course, you also need to use the cloud. So that's my answer to it. Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any question? I have a student who actually does IoT and literally came to my first IoT class and came up with, working on a sensor to track temperature for vaccine distribution. So their company works on vaccine distribution. So whenever I think of supply chain, I'm not thinking of food chain, though I have students working in food chain also. But today, vaccine distribution and everything comes through shipping containers, so it's huge. So I see two other questions. I want to go to Viren's question, which brings us back to the car. So are you doing something in the V2V space, from cars connecting to other cars, vehicle to vehicle or vehicle to infrastructure, V2X space?
Very initial stage, so that we actually are a part of a platform, the 5G Automotive Association. It's a body which represents telecom companies and auto companies, and there are also other technology companies like Qualcomm, Nokia are all part of it. And we're trying to work on use cases. So the whole objective is, as we all work together to see how we can use 5G technology along with vehicle telematics on a number of areas for autonomous driving, how you can ensure V2X in controlled environments, right? So it's still work in progress. We haven't seen any commercial deployments yet at this point in time, Sudha.
So from fleet, when you spoke about fleet and connected cars, talk to us about the fleet first.
So fleet, we have more than 4 million vehicles today using AT&T connectivity, largely 4G.
Is this global? The numbers are global?
Yeah, of the 4 million, I would say more than 90% in the US. The remaining are outside of the US. Right. Okay. So today, again, from an IoT standpoint, I would say more than 92% of the assets that you're monitoring are all in the US. The remaining is outside of the US.
Okay. So, I mean, we've had speakers come in and talk about digital twins in fleet management in the past, especially from India. I remember one speaker. So I know that fleet management, not all cars are coming out of manufacturing connected yet in India, but fleet management has its own problem, and that is being solved by connectivity. So there's a huge opportunity there. So when you think about your IoT strategy, you spoke about 3 different approach of revenue generation in a previous conference. And you spoke about various different industries and being very customer centric. And one message I got from you was you focus on customers, what problem you're solving for the customers, work backward from there to provide the entire ecosystem that's needed. That's what is the power of IoT. It's also a challenge with IoT that you could get a sensor company which offers a certain kind of connectivity. You connect to that. The next company would have in the chain, right? The data would move, and there is a lot of non-standard technologies, right? So there's also inconsistency across different technologies. So you mentioned something about with certain companies, you would be the single point of contact to shepherd the whole relationship. So the customer doesn't have to see if there's a disconnect between the IoT company and the edge analytics company or the cloud company or something. So you kind of take care of the whole thing. So the use case you said was, here's the dashboard, here's your data, we've added our sensors, let's go, right? And then you start measuring the ROI from that. But partnership is not an easy thing, right? Because every single company wants to be the point of contact with the customer. And the more they are engaged with the customers, obviously they can get the preference of the customer and adapt their product. And everybody wants to do that. And with IoT, one of the things that happens is maybe you have a bunch of IoT startups who are providing the end product, and they would be happy to, benefit from AT&T's distribution to larger customers. But when you go work with a cloud player who would have their own connection, would want their own connection, right? How do you manage the partnership egos in the partnerships? I want to ask, especially, right? So when you say, okay, AT&T is going to bring this deal and we are going to be the front end for this customers, and you bring, maybe 5 or 6 different partners into the game, how does it work? And do you see a change? Is there a secret sauce to make this work?
I think what really matters is trust and transparency, Sudha. So what we do is, even before we go to a client, so we, of course, we do have our partners. Many of them are the hyperscale providers. Many of them are very large system integrators who have very strong integration capabilities. So once we identify the kind of customers that we want to target, even before we engage with the customer, we figure out who's going to lead that deal. And if, for example, we have a very good relationship with that customer and their spend with us is very high, then we come to an agreement with the partner saying that, hey, you already have an existing relationship. We'll play the role of the lead and you support us on that. And that's how we would work. And then we would agree on a rev share.
Okay.
On the other side, if we believe that the partner has better relationship with the customer, if they have a better chance of influencing all the decision makers within the customer organization, then we are more than happy to support the partner. So it all boils down to trust and transparency, making sure that we go after deal only after doing the proper due diligence, understanding who has the better relationship, and then we work out the agreement. So that's how we do it.
Okay. So that explains the egos of multiple big companies who owns the customer. So the transparency and that point about who owns the customer relationship, who has the trust of the customer, so you can leverage that across the partnership. And I want to come back to my favorite topic of data. So in a partnership, so IoT is about, as you said, the sensors collect data from the physical world, and then now it goes to the cloud, and then you're going to draw insights, give dashboard to the customers at some abstract level, whatever the use cases we're talking about, right? It's about data, moving the data, and your job as the telco is to move the data as fast and efficiently, cost effectively for the customer. And the value the customer is going to see is in the insights. That is going to save some cost or bring in new revenues or improve some processes, right? So in this movement of data, again, who owns the data and how do you manage that? Do you have any strategy or best practice on how you do that?
Yeah, so again, depending upon the role that we play in the solutioning for a client, and if our role is only kind of confined to connectivity, then we are very clear. We are just going to move the traffic from the asset through the network to any cloud environment or to a data center environment where the customer is hosting the applications. So we just play that role of the connectivity provider. However, again, depending upon the client engagement, if we are playing the role of not just the connectivity provider, but if the customer comes and tells us that, hey, we want to use your platform, or we want to use an AT&T application which is hosted on that platform, and you manage my data. At that point in time, again, we work out the understanding with the partner with whom we are working with in terms of how we can monetize that data and how we can arrive at a rev share. So that's how it would work, Sudha. So it again purely depends on the client engagement and our role within that particular solution that we are providing.
So what we're hearing here is that AT&T has no plans to be in the cloud, to have a cloud service.
No, we have never been a cloud provider. We have always been a cloud enabler. So because cloud is a scale game, right? I mean, we can't compete against AWS and an Azure or an IBM. So what we do is we provide connectivity to the cloud platform, private VPN networks or cellular networks. So very strong, good, secure connectivity to a cloud platform. Not just to the cloud platform, but even to any SaaS provider, software as a service, or any application hosted on the cloud, and the providers are offering it as a service. We are a cloud enabler. We would like to call ourselves as a cloud enabler, but we are not in the cloud game, so to speak.
Does that make your job a little bit more difficult in that with these partnerships that you're building? You have a company large enough that it manages its own data. Things have moved, of course, as you know, to the cloud, whether it be AWS or the other providers. How has that simplified or made your job more difficult?
So Henry, in most of the relationships that we have with our customers, we have a clear understanding in terms of what role each player is going to play, in the sense that if it's just connectivity, then we just provide the connectivity. We decide either we contract with the customer directly or we go through the partner who's providing the solution. So it could be Microsoft or it could be an AWS, right? So the roles are very clearly defined even before we go to a client, Henry. So that's why we don't get into challenges after we implement to find out who's going to manage the data, how do we work out the rev share and all this stuff. All that is done even before we go to the client. So from that standpoint, it is very straightforward for us.
Very good.
It's only when there is ambiguity that's when we have challenges. But otherwise, we clearly define what each player role is. Henry, I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, maybe in more general terms, since I know it would be difficult to talk about ongoing or specific cases with onboard clients, uses that are ripe for development, things that you are looking forward to and say, boy, this is a clear opportunity.
Right. So again, in terms of qualification of the opportunity, again, it depends on who owns the customer. So either we qualify if you really have a very strong relationship with the client, we qualify that opportunity, and then we bring in the right set of partners. On the other hand, if we do not have a good, strong relationship with the client, and if the partner has got relationship, they do the qualification process, and then they bring that opportunity to us. So I think we spend a lot of time in terms of qualification of the opportunity, whether there's a genuine business case there or not, whether the customer has got the budget to fund that particular project. I think in the IoT world, it's very, very important to do the due diligence. We just don't want to waste our time, going and doing a POC or, setting up a solution or a pilot. And after 6 months or 9 months, the client says that, hey, I don't have a budget, right? So we just want to make sure that we spend a lot of time in qualification of the opportunity, understand the business case, find out what are the clear KPIs that the customer wants to achieve. I have this business problem. I have a clear KPI. I want to reduce my maintenance cost by 20%. Once we have the clear KPIs, once we know who the business owner is, once the opportunity is qualified, that's when we really work with the partners and decide how to structure the whole solution and take it to their clients, Henry. And that's how we work.
Who are the leading evangelists in this field that you look to help spread the word so that these possible customers come on board?
Sunil is one of the leading evangelists. That is why he's been given all these awards. I'm not sure. Okay. Do you have anybody else to add that you would mention?
There are quite a few people who are, very good leaders, not just, in India, I know quite a few of them who are very strong thought leaders, who do speak at forums, work with industry bodies, working with academia, mentoring young men and women. I mentor a number of young men and women who are wanting to carve out a career in the IoT space, right? So I work very closely with academia. In fact, tomorrow I'm doing a session with the Indian Institute of Management, where I'm going to talk to them about 200 odd students are going to listen to me tomorrow, whereas I'm going to talk to them about how IoT can create business impact, right? So I've done similar kind of sessions with other colleges, right? So it's a passion for me. It's not necessary that I do it only for AT&T's benefit. It's something that is, I really find it fulfilling and satisfying when I'm able to share my experiences with others, right? So,
can I jump in and say one thing? I just remembered Yash, our host here, Yashashuni Vishwanath, is actually going to be speaking at IoT Slam on December 10th about fairness in AI. And she's got it focused on data scientists. We've been talking about AI ethics a lot, but she specifically is, a data scientist. So from that perspective, she's talking about fairness and metrics for measuring fairness and things like that. So that is on IoT Slam. So maybe, if you're looking to find more about IoT and other people in that space, I think she got called out as one of the top 100 people that IoT Slam tracks each month. I think they keep a specific continuous running. They have these icons tracking everybody, showing her top 100 people based on their engagement. And I think I've seen Sunil in there, and that's how, I think I see Sunil in all these feeds that comes my way. Is there any question? I think we are reaching the top of the hour. And I want to see whether we missed anything, because I came in having worked in IoT and tracked IoT at a broader perspective. I wanted to understand the telco perspective. I think I'm very happy because, I got something new today. Everybody who works in IoT space know it's about partnership, and there is challenges in partnerships. The revenue generation comes focused on data. And I've written a blog on LinkedIn also about this whole revenue from business model from data, from IoT. And one takeaway I got was, yes, it's a partnership game, but be very transparent on who owns the customer, who has the relationship. And then one of the things in IoT is specifically is there are a lot of pilots, and then the pilots fail. And Sunil said that we don't do
scaling. This is not just an India problem. This is a global problem where they get into what is called pilot purgatory. They remain in perpetual pilots. Many of these pilots have to scale because the mantra in IoT, Sudha, is think of the big picture, start small, scale fast. If you're not going to scale IoT, then you're not going to get that value. So I think a lot of the projects globally, projects are not scaling. And I think it's very, very important for projects to scale. And that's when companies can really unlock a lot more value from IoT solutions.
Yeah.
And I just have one
Yes, go ahead.
No, I just have one request, because we're coming to the end of the show. I understand Henry is going to write a blog, but before the blog is published, I would like to have a look at it before.
Yes, definitely.
Because I have my own process. I just can't straight away approve something, and AT&T has its own thing.
So no problem.
I'll have to get an internal approval from AT&T whether the blog can go out in the public domain or not. Okay. So just wanted you all to be sensitive about that.
Yeah, no problem at all. I don't think you've said, and you've made us, understand AT&T in much positive light today, and understand the bigger perspective of digitization and telcos' role in that. I don't think you've said anything that is specific to AT&T's strategy. We would like to have gleamed it, but you've been very careful because you've been a public speaker for a long time. So, but no problem at all. We would make sure that we get your okay before it goes live. So no problem at all. We have Henry works for NBC, though he finds time to come do this blog on Wednesdays at our weekly web. We're thankful for that. But he has an existing process of approval and stuff that he works with us. So we'll make sure that we'll do that. No worries. Okay, I want to see whether there's any comment. I'm just seeing people saying thank yous. Okay, so people are saying it's been a good session and it's been very helpful for them. So thank you, everybody. With that, I'm going to close out for today. We will have this session on YouTube, and we will embed that and have the blog post, but we do have timing to do that. So today being Wednesday, we do try to do that by Friday. So I do my live stream on end of day Friday. my time here, which will be your Saturday morning, Sunil. So we'll try to see whether we can get this done. And if you need the blog approval to make few more days, that's not end of the world. We can post it later too. So, but I'll be sharing this back with my Sudha live stream audience to make them go back to this. We usually put this also on my newsletter. It is called Jamte newsletter. So it's bit.ly/Jamte newsletter, which goes out to all my student alums typically. So we will make sure that, this recording goes there. There's so much nugget of information. So I'm kind of tempted to see whether I should, do a post on that, but I'll wait for Henry's post. Henry does a amazing job of just gleaming the key nuggets in there. So with that, I want to wrap up. Hey, Victor, good to see you. So with that, I want to wrap up. Today, actually, there is a conference called UX Strat, which is about UX design that's going on for across time zones. They're doing this from 9 to 12 and 3 to 6 in 3 different time zones. So it covers Asia, Europe, and North America. And I'm actually speaking about AIX, which is the framework for designing AI. And I've expanded my AIX framework to cover character development for AI, so we can bring AI ethics in there. So my talk is 9 o'clock Singapore time, which is 5 p.m. my time here. So if you're at the UX Strat conference, come listen to me. And with that, definitely don't miss listening to Yash. And tomorrow is your presentation. You mentioned that, right, Sunil? Is there a pointer that we can share about your presentation tomorrow? Or that is limited, that is close to
That's
the
only
school?
for the students. That's only for the students.
It's a university talk. Okay.
It's an Indian Institute of Management.
Okay. So if there's anything else that's coming up, that you seem to be everywhere evangelizing, but you bring so much solid experience in the telco space, in IoT strategy, the general digitization. So I would love to include that at my Friday Sudha
I've
Live.
written a few articles recently. So one on the future of IoT, one on how IoT is impacting manufacturing. And of course, I told you that I've just written an article about digitization of supply chains.
Yeah.
How digital twins will be an enabler. So I'll probably consolidate everything once it's ready and email that to you.
Yeah. Share anything, and especially when you're talking, if there are events and stuff, because we try to keep everything we share very global. Though I'm originally from India, I don't have enough of the latest happenings in India. So if you can share anything that would be useful for people about conferences or events or fellowship or, job opportunities and the like, I'm happy to include that. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Let me see. I'm seeing a comment. Yes, Victor is saying he just loved it. Yes, helpful session. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for your time and for doing this so late at your time. I really, really appreciate it. Hope we can, you've got us thinking more about IoT, especially the partnership aspect. I just loved it. And you gave us the secret sauce of how not to fail with pilots, because you do pilots with the intent to scale and do your homework ahead of time and keep transparency with your partners. That's a fantastic lesson here. So thank you so much, Sunil. With that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Bye. Okay, bye. Bye-bye. I'm going to stop the live share.